There comes a quiet moment after 60 when the body begins to speak more clearly than ever before. Not in pain, but in signals, slower recovery, thinner skin, fragile bones, sharper reactions to stress. Many people respond by reaching for bottles, believing more vitamins must mean more life. Yet biology is rarely impressed by excess. In fact, some nutrients that once helped can, with age, quietly interfere with the body's wisdom, while others become absolutely essential for preserving strength, clarity, and resilience. Science does not ask us to fear vitamins, it asks us to understand them. Asterisk, this speech is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Nutritional needs vary based on individual health conditions, medications, and medical history. Always consult a qualified healthcare professional before starting, stopping, or changing any supplement or vitamin regimen, especially after the age of 60, asterisk after 60. The conversation between vitamins and the body changes in subtle but important ways, especially when it comes to fat-soluble nutrients like vitamin A and vitamin E, because these compounds are not simply used and discarded, but stored, remembered, and slowly released by the body over time. In younger years, the liver acts like a well-organized archive, storing what is needed and clearing excess with relative ease, but aging alters liver enzyme activity, bile production, and renal clearance, meaning accumulation becomes more likely, even when intake seems modest by modern supplement standards. Vitamin A, in particular, illustrates this paradox because it is essential for vision, immune signaling, and cellular differentiation. Yet in excess, it quietly interferes with bone remodeling by stimulating osteoclast activity while suppressing osteoblasts, leading to a gradual weakening of skeletal integrity that may not reveal itself until a minor fall results in a major fracture. Research has shown that older adults with high circulating retinol levels often have higher fracture risk despite adequate calcium intake, a reminder that nutrition is not additive but relational, shaped by balance rather than abundance. Synthetic vitamin E follows a similar pattern of unintended consequences, as high doses of isolated alpha-tocopherol can displace other beneficial tocopherols and tocotrienols, narrowing the antioxidant spectrum instead of strengthening it, and in doing so, altering platelet aggregation and vascular signaling in ways that may increase hemorrhagic risk or cardiovascular instability in susceptible individuals. Aging blood vessels are already navigating stiffness, endothelial stress, and oxidative signaling, and overwhelming these systems with single nutrient. Megadoses can mute the body's adaptive responses rather than support them. What makes this particularly relevant after 60 is that symptoms of excess are rarely immediate, often presenting as fatigue, joint discomfort, subtle dizziness, or changes in skin and hair that are easily attributed to aging itself, allowing the underlying imbalance to persist unnoticed. From a biological perspective, the body after 60 is less interested in surplus and more invested in precision, responding better to nutrients delivered in physiologic ranges, preferably from food or carefully calibrated supplementation that respects storage dynamics. The deeper lesson here is not that vitamins are dangerous, but that the aging body becomes less forgiving of nutritional extremes, requiring a shift from the youthful mindset of more is better to the mature understanding that signaling, timing, and dosage determine whether a nutrient behaves as medicine or as metabolic stress, and the shift invites a more thoughtful, restrained approach to supplementation grounded in respect for how the body ages and adapts rather than how it once performed asterisk. As the body ages, its relationship with water-soluble vitamins such as vitamin C and the B complex becomes more nuanced than commonly assumed, because while these nutrients are not stored in large quantities like fat-soluble vitamins, they still exert powerful regulatory effects on cellular signaling, nerve conduction, and stress adaptation. High-dose isolated vitamin C is often marketed as universally protective, yet in older adults, it can behave less like a gentle antioxidant and more like a biochemical disruptor when taken in excess, blunting the body's own endogenous antioxidant. Systems such as glutathione and superoxide dismutase, which rely on a mild level of oxidative signaling to remain responsive. The aging organism depends on these signaling pathways to trigger repair, immune modulation, and mitochondrial adaptation, and overwhelming them with constant external antioxidants can reduce the cell's capacity to self-regulate. In this context, oxidative stress is not the enemy, but a language the body uses, and silencing it completely can impair resilience rather than enhance it. The same principle applies to aggressive B-complex supplementation, particularly when high doses of synthetic B6 and B9 are taken without clear deficiency or clinical need. Vitamin B6, while essential for neurotransmitter synthesis and amino acid metabolism, can accumulate functionally at the nerve level, leading to sensory neuropathy when consumed chronically at high doses, a risk that increases as nerve regeneration slows with age. Folate in its synthetic form can mask vitamin B12 deficiency, delaying diagnosis while neurological damage quietly progresses, an especially relevant concern after 60 when gastric acid production declines and B12 absorption naturally weakens. The nervous system in later life becomes more sensitive to fluctuations in excitatory and inhibitory signaling, and excessive stimulation from concentrated B vitamins can manifest as restlessness, sleep disturbance, anxiety, or palpitations rather than energy and clarity. What makes this challenging is that these symptoms are often interpreted as signs of aging, stress, or hormonal change rather than as signals of nutrient imbalance. From a systems biology perspective, water-soluble does not mean biologically trivial, because even transient spikes in plasma levels can influence gene expression, enzymatic activity, and neural firing patterns. Older bodies prioritize stability over stimulation, preferring steady, food-based nutrient exposure that aligns with circadian rhythms and metabolic capacity. When vitamins are extracted, concentrated, and consumed in pharmacologic doses, they bypass these natural checks and balances, creating a mismatch between intake and physiological demand. This does not suggest avoidance of vitamin C or B vitamins, but rather a reframing of their role as supportive cofactors rather than performance enhancers, recognizing that after 60, the goal shifts from pushing metabolism harder to preserving coherence between cells, nerves, and biochemical feedback loops that sustain long-term neurological and metabolic harmony. With advancing age, vitamin D gradually shifts from being viewed as a simple nutrient to being understood as a hormone-like messenger that influences hundreds of genes involved in immunity, inflammation, muscle integrity, and skeletal maintenance. After 60, the skin's capacity to synthesize vitamin D from sunlight declines significantly, while time spent outdoors often decreases, creating a silent deficiency that does not announce itself with dramatic symptoms, but instead reveals itself through slower healing, weakened muscles, low mood, and increased susceptibility to infections. In this stage of life, vitamin D no longer functions primarily as a calcium assistant, but as a coordinator of mineral balance and immune signaling, ensuring that calcium absorbed from the diet is used constructively rather than deposited indiscriminately. In soft tissues, this is where the partnership between vitamin D and magnesium becomes biologically critical, because magnesium acts as a required cofactor for the enzymes that convert vitamin D into its active form within the liver and kidneys. Without sufficient magnesium, vitamin D supplementation can remain functionally inert or Worse, increased calcium absorption without proper regulation, contributing to muscle cramps, vascular stiffness, or subtle cardiovascular strain, aging. Kidneys already face a reduced capacity to finely tune electrolyte balance, making this interplay especially important after 60. When vitamin D is taken daily in physiologically appropriate amounts rather than sporadic high doses, it mimics natural sunlight exposure, providing consistent signaling that supports bone remodeling without overwhelming regulatory systems. This steady exposure helps maintain muscle strength and neuromuscular coordination, reducing fall risk not by strengthening bones alone, but by improving balance and reaction time. On an immune level, vitamin D modulates inflammatory responses, encouraging immune cells to respond efficiently without excessive cytokine release, a balance that becomes increasingly important as chronic low-grade inflammation rises with age. The science suggests that vitamin D sufficiency supports immune tolerance as much as immune defense, helping the body distinguish between genuine threats and harmless stimuli. What is often overlooked is the psychological dimension of this signaling, as vitamin D receptors are present in brain regions involved in mood regulation and cognitive processing, meaning adequate levels can subtly support emotional resilience and mental clarity. Rather than acting as a stimulant, vitamin D works as a stabilizer, reinforcing the body's internal order. The deeper biological wisdom here is that vitamin D does not force the body into health, but reminds it how to regulate itself. And when paired with magnesium and taken with consistency and restraint, it becomes less of an intervention and more of a restoration of a signal that aging has gradually dimmed asterisk. After 60, vitamin B12 becomes less a matter of dietary choice and more a matter of biological access, because the body's ability to extract this nutrient from food depends on processes that quietly weaken with age. The stomach's production of hydrochloric acid, an intrinsic factor, gradually declines. And without these two components, vitamin B12 cannot be efficiently released from protein-bound foods or absorbed in the small intestine. This means that even individuals who consume adequate amounts of animal-based foods may still drift into deficiency over time, not from lack of intake, but from impaired absorption. What makes this especially concerning is that vitamin B12 deficiency often develops slowly and invisibly, affecting systems that decline subtly rather than abruptly. Red blood cell formation begins to lose efficiency, leading to mild anemia that may manifest as fatigue, breathlessness, or reduced exercise tolerance, symptoms that are frequently dismissed as normal aging. More critically, vitamin B12 plays a central role in maintaining the myelin sheath that insulates nerves, and when levels fall, nerve signaling becomes less precise, resulting in numbness, tingling, balance instability, or changes in gait that increase fall risk. Cognitive changes may also emerge, including memory lapses, slower processing speed, or difficulty concentrating, often mistaken for early cognitive aging rather than a reversible nutritional deficiency. From a biochemical perspective, vitamin B12 is essential for methylation processes that regulate DNA expression, neurotransmitter synthesis, and detoxification pathways, meaning its absence affects not just one system, but the coherence of the entire metabolic network. Elevated homocysteine levels, commonly seen in B12 deficiency, place additional strain on blood vessels and are associated with cardiovascular and neurological risk, further amplifying age-related vulnerabilities. What makes vitamin B12 unique among vitamins is that its deficiency can cause permanent neurological damage if left uncorrected for too long, underscoring the importance of early recognition and consistent support. Unlike stimulatory nutrients, B12 does not push the body to perform, but enables it to function with clarity and precision, restoring signal fidelity within the nervous system. For older adults, low dose, regular supplementation and absorbable forms can bypass gastric limitations and provide a reliable source without overwhelming the system. The broader lesson is that aging is not simply a process of loss, but of changing requirements. And vitamin B12 exemplifies how maintaining neurological integrity after 60 often depends not on consuming more food, but on understanding which biological gates have narrowed and how to respectfully support them so the nervous system can continue to communicate with the body in a language of balance and coordination. Asterisk vitamin K2 operates in the body with a kind of quiet authority, rarely discussed yet profoundly influential, especially after 60 when calcium metabolism becomes increasingly fragile and misdirected. While calcium is often emphasized as the cornerstone of bone health, its effectiveness depends entirely on where it is deposited. And vitamin K2 serves as the biological traffic controller that determines whether calcium strengthens the skeleton or hardens the arteries. As people age, the risk is not a lack of calcium, but a loss of precision in calcium placement. And without adequate vitamin K2, calcium can drift into soft tissues, contributing to arterial calcification, joint stiffness, and impaired cardiovascular elasticity. At the molecular level, vitamin K2 activates proteins such as osteocalcin and matrix glyprotein, which bind calcium and guide it into bones while preventing its accumulation in blood vessel walls. This process becomes increasingly critical after 60 when bone turnover accelerates and vascular tissues are already coping with years of oxidative and mechanical stress. Modern diets often provide limited amounts of vitamin K2, as it is found primarily in fermented foods and certain animal products that are less commonly consumed, creating a gap between calcium intake and calcium utilization. What makes vitamin K2 especially relevant in later life is its synergistic relationship with vitamin D, as vitamin D increases calcium absorption while vitamin K2 ensures that absorbed calcium is directed safely and constructively. Without this partnership, well-intentioned supplementation can inadvertently increase vascular risk while attempting to protect bones. From a systems biology perspective, vitamin K2 exemplifies how nutrients do not act in isolation but as part of integrated signaling networks that maintain structural integrity over time. Clinically, insufficient vitamin K2 may not cause immediate symptoms, but its absence reveals itself gradually through bone thinning, arterial stiffness, and reduced physical resilience. The aging body values guidance over abundance, and vitamin K2 provides direction rather than force, helping tissues make intelligent use of available resources. Beyond bones and arteries, emerging research suggests vitamin K2 may support mitochondrial function and reduce inflammatory signaling, contributing to overall cellular efficiency rather than overstimulation. Philosophically, vitamin K2 reminds use that longevity is not about flooding the body with building materials, but about preserving order and intention within biological systems. When calcium is guided rather than merely supplied, the body maintains strength without sacrificing flexibility, stability without rigidity, and this subtle balance reflects a deeper principle of healthy aging, where nourishment serves as information that teaches the body how to remain structured, adaptable, and resilient as time advances.